Hello, wonderful galactic beings, and welcome to Lucinda Soul. My name is Celinda, and in this video I'm going to talk about centralized versus decentralized systems. And we have been hearing a lot about centralized versus decentralized in terms of data management, for example. What are the pros, what are the cons? In terms of centralized money, so the banking system, versus decentralized cryptocurrencies, and also the form of government, centralized or decentralized. So I wanted to dive into that topic. So government especially. And I'm living in a country where direct democracy is upheld, so Switzerland. And I was just crunching numbers the other day because I was reading a book and it just got me thinking. I'm going to refer to the book later on. Let me just crunch the numbers in front of you out loud so you see why it got me thinking, okay? So Switzerland has roughly 8 million living here. So I'm going to round up or down the numbers so to keep things simple, right? So it's more than 8 million, but let's say it's roughly 8 million. Out of which 60% are citizens, like Swiss, let's say, and 40% are of migration background. 50% of those are Swiss citizens, though. And 80% of the population is 18 years of age and above, so roughly 6.4 million. And if you combine those two things, so you have to be 18 years of age for federal elections, for example, and Swiss citizenship, we get roughly 4.8 million people that are eligible to vote, so participate in life, essentially. Okay, so I was looking at the past 5 years of different votings, and the participation was I thought it was quite high. I don't know how it relates to other governments and nations, but it's usually around 40% up to 60%. Sometimes it's a bit higher, sometimes it's a bit lower, depending on the topic and how, in which extent it influences our individual lives, I guess. So if the participation is low, then roughly 2 million people vote. And if participation is high, roughly 3 million people vote. And then I was looking at splits. So let's say there's a controversial topic or something that really influences our lives on an individual level, and the split is 45-55, let's say. Then roughly 1.35 million would be for a certain legislation, and 1.65 million would be against that legislation, or vice versa. So I'm not getting into specific topics, just I'm generalizing. So which means with this split, 55 and 45, we would have 1/5 versus 1/6 that is either for or against a certain legislation. And then I was like, okay, so basically, if we have 1/5 winning the debate, let's say, they decide on the rest of the population. So 1/5 is like roughly 20% would then decide, so these 1.65 million decide on all the 8 million. So one person out of 5 decides how all of these 5 get to live on an individual level. I was like, is that really the best we can do? Really? On a human level? It just got me thinking, and I wasn't really satisfied about the results, and I never really thought about it so deeply, let's say. And what kicked me off thinking a bit deeper about this was the following passage from a book that is from a series. It's a series of books. It's 10 books called Anastasia by Vladimir Maigret. And I was reading the second part of the 8th book, basically the 9th book. And there was a passage that really got me thinking. So I'm going to read it out loud to you. It's page 83 for those who want to read along or get the book. By the way, I'm going to insert the link where you can purchase the books. God granted all people the same power, and consequently, the only social structure that can be perfect is one where no center of power exists, where each person is endowed with equal power. When you give your voice away to someone else, you're in fact not endowing anyone with power. Rather, you're giving your voice away to a person and rendering it dependent on the system that's evolved. And in doing so, you willingly divest yourself of your God-granted power. And over the centuries, a distorted mindset takes shape in a great number of people. The ruler and government should decide important questions for us. The thoughts of people like that don't reflect the natural order of life. And then I was like, ooh, okay, so we're getting into natural order of life. And divesting yourself of your God-granted power. Okay? So God granted us the power of giving our voice, of making our views heard. So then I was looking at the word democracy, which has the root dem, right? And we focus on that. This is the collective, comes from Latin. Collective, nation, the people. But it also, other words or other verbs also have the root dem. For example, demere, take away, take off. Or demovere, distract, or even force to yield. So I was like, are we not being distracted by this process because we are in fact giving our voices away to a system that we trust? So then I was thinking of, Tucker Carlson's interview with President Vladimir Putin, and when Vladimir Putin, he was referring to historical facts on Russia. And I was wondering, he started off basically with Prince Vladimir. And I was wondering what happened before Prince Vladimir. Because there's a whole history about the time before Prince Vladimir. So, and this book actually gave me the answer, because I was asking myself, why did he start there? Was there a particular reason? And so in this book, actually, it's referring to archival material that can be seen in the State Vladimir Suzdal Museum. So basically, Prince Vladimir baptized Rus, which was then the nation Rus, or the Vedic Russians, because they were living a Vedic way of life, in 987. And I was wondering, how did the people react to this Christianization? Because there is this movement of families from Western countries moving to Russia because of Christian values, which I understand perfectly. Because the Western countries are basically diverting from Christian values at this moment. For many people, that is true. So then I went to an archive material where I saw what happened when this Christianization took place and how people perceived it. So I'm going to read to you some things that happened. So first I'm going to go to page 66, where basically there's a list of inventory of a clergyman. So one clergyman and his inventory and his property, basically. What it was made up of. Let me see if I find it quickly. Okay, so first of all, when Christianization took place, there were lots of things that were changed in the way of life of the Russians at the time. So suddenly there was sales tax, there was fees for settling disputes, there was court fees, there was wedding fees. For example, from the groom, 3 altins and 3 dengas. So altin is also a Turkish word, which means altin is gold. So I suppose these are gold coins. 3 gold coins, 3 dengas from the bride for a table, 2 altins and 2 dengas. From a groom from another district, 2 grivnas. So suddenly there were these fees and fines which didn't exist before, and clergymen telling the Russians how to live their life. And I was trying to find, exactly. So inventory of the people and property of Metropolitan Hilarion. I don't know where that is, but in any case, it must be somewhere in Suzdal or Vladimir. So 16 elders, 6 directors administrating the holdings, 66 personal security personnel, 23 servants, 25 choristers, I don't know what that is, 2 sacristans, 59 artisans, and working people, making up 180 people in all. So basically, this clergyman, who was taking orders from Constantinople, Istanbul, needed 66 security officers protecting him, which I found very odd, because if the people of Rus really embraced this new kind of this new religion, Christianity, that was presented, why did he need 66 security officers? So I gathered that this was not well received, because as I found out in the series of books that I read, is that the Vedic Russians, they were upholding a Vedic lifestyle, which was basically, like all indigenous people, being close to nature, because they were of the opinion that God communicates with us through nature. So being close to nature and co-creating with God and looking after nature was being a spiritual way of life, was being spiritual. So they were already devoted to God. So this new way of revering God was actually a threat to their way of life. And I'm going to read you something else that I thought was really interesting. And I know it can be triggering to some people to use the word God in the sentence that I'm going to read you, because the word God has been misused in so many ways in the past centuries. So if you want to be at God's side, become a goddess yourself, or become a god yourself. I'm going to repeat that. If you want to be at God's side, become a god or goddess yourself. I'm going to replace the word God with the word light. If you want to be at light's side, become light yourself. I'm going to repeat the same sentence and use the word nature. If you want to be at nature's side, become nature yourself. So here's a people who were close to God, they were close to nature, they were close to light, they were basically self-governed. They had settlements, they had family estates. Every family was granted a hectare of land, which they were looking after. And this is the way they were governing themselves. They had councils, they had elders and wise people at their sides. And everybody was involved, not just 1/5 or 1/6 of the population. Everyone was involved. Children were involved. Adolescents were involved in that way of life. So, and then I was thinking, so maybe we have all been serving the same masters all along. There is no difference between Russia, China, the Western countries. And, you know, to tie it to my previous video, I was talking about polarity and how we basically label ourselves, categorize ourselves, and imagine this cube being a 2000 by 2000 cube, making up 8 billion. And we are like entangled in this polarization instead of zooming out and trying to see the forest, instead of missing the forest for the trees. And I think this is where we're at the moment. So if I think about the speech to the Federal Assembly in February, I think, of President Vladimir Putin, he was promoting more hospitals, more medical centers in schools and universities, and that sounded to me very much like the West. That didn't sound to me like, going back to communal levels and decentralizing. It sounded like more centralization, as is happening in the West as well. So let's try to not miss the forest for the trees. And in light of recent events and Pavel Durov being in prison now in France, I would like to add that he was basically pressed to leave the country in 2013 because his social platform Vkontakte, keep in touch, like Vkontakte, to be in touch, be in contact, the government basically was trying to get personal information on its users, and Pavel Durov did not consent to that. And he's doing the same with Telegram. He's upholding his values of free speech and free assembly. He's doing exactly the same thing, and he's imprisoned now in a Western country. So whereas in 2013 he was hailed as upholding Western values, now he's being put in prison in a Western country. So let's try to zoom out and not get entangled in these polarities, because we are all essentially serving the same system, the same masters, whatever is going on the shadowy side of this cube, if you look at my previous video. So I just wanted to voice my opinion. So and I really felt committed. I don't like the word compelled because that seems very forceful. So I really felt committed to voice this opinion and to remind all of you that we are all part of this 8 billion cube. Try not to get entangled, and because the truth lies in being close to source, which means being close to nature. And that's what the indigenous people have taught us all along, and before religion was even a topic. So I just wanted to share that with you. So if you like this content, please share, and thank you for listening, and remember, stay luminous.